The bar's neon lights pulsed like a heartbeat, but Cole's pulse was louder, drowning out the chatter and clinking glasses. He sat alone at the counter, nursing a whiskey, his broad shoulders hunched as if the weight of his own thoughts could crush him. At 25, he was a man built on certainties, until tonight, when a stranger's glance across the room cracked something deep inside him. Cole had always been the golden boy of his small-town Ohio upbringing. Star quarterback, prom king, the guy every girl wanted and every guy envied. He'd moved to New York City 2 years ago, chasing a finance job and a life that screamed success. He had it all: a sleek apartment in Brooklyn, a girlfriend named Sarah who checked every box, and a future mapped out with precision. But lately, the map felt wrong. The lines didn't lead where he thought they would. And tonight, in this crowded Manhattan bar, the compass spun wildly. He didn't know why he kept coming back to the Rusty Anchor, a trendy spot known for its diverse crowd and electric energy. Maybe it was the anonymity of the city, the way he could slip into a place like this and feel like someone else. Or maybe it was the way his eyes kept catching on men. Men like the one leaning against the wall now, his sharp jawline catching the light, his easy confidence pulling Cole's gaze like a magnet. His name was Julian. Cole didn't know that yet, but he would soon. Julian was everything Cole wasn't. Unapologetic, vibrant, and free in a way that made Cole's chest ache with something he couldn't name. Dressed in a tailored charcoal sweater that hugged his lean frame, Julian moved through the room like he owned it, his warm brown eyes scanning the crowd until they locked on Cole's. The air shifted. Cole's grip tightened on his glass. "You look like you're solving the world's problems over there," Julian said, sliding onto the stool beside him. His voice was smooth, with a hint of a southern drawl that felt out of place in the city's chaos. Up close, he was even more striking. High cheekbones, a faint scar above his left eyebrow, and a smile that was both playful and knowing. Cole forced a laugh, his heart thudding. Just trying to survive the night. Julian tilted his head, studying him. Rough day at the office, or something deeper? The question hit too close. Cole took a sip of whiskey, stalling. "You always this forward with strangers?" "Only the ones who look like they're carrying a secret." Julian's smile widened, but his eyes held something serious, like he could see through Cole's carefully constructed facade. Cole wanted to brush it off, to retreat to the safety of small talk, but something in Julian's gaze held him there. They talked for hours, about music, about the city, about the way Julian had left his small Georgia town to chase his dreams as a photographer. Cole found himself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. He told Julian about his job, about the pressure to be perfect, about the way he sometimes felt like a fraud in his own life. He didn't mention Sarah. He didn't mention the lies he told himself every morning in the mirror. By the time the bar started to empty, Cole felt lighter, like he'd shed a layer of himself he hadn't known was there. Julian leaned closer, his voice low. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's life, Cole?" The question was a blade, sharp and precise. Cole's breath caught. He wanted to say no, to laugh it off, but the truth was clawing its way out. "All the time," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Julian's hand brushed against his on the counter, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through Cole's entire body. He pulled back, his mind screaming to retreat, to run back to the safety of the life he knew. But his body stayed rooted, betraying him. "Let's get out of here," Julian said, standing and offering a hand. "There's a park nearby. Best view in the city at night." Cole hesitated. Every instinct told him to stay put, to go home to Sarah, to the life he'd built. But his hand moved before his brain could catch up, slipping into Julian's. The warmth of Julian's grip was like a lifeline, pulling him into uncharted waters. The park was a short walk away, the autumn air crisp and biting. The city skyline glittered in the distance, a reminder of the world Cole had been trying to conquer. But here, under the canopy of golden leaves, with Julian's shoulder brushing against his, that world felt far away. They stopped by a quiet bench, the city's hum fading into the background. "You're not like most guys I meet," Julian said, his voice soft but steady. "You're carrying something heavy. You don't have to tell me what it is, but I see it." Cole's throat tightened. He wanted to tell Julian everything. About the expectations that had shaped him, about the fear that kept him up at night, about the part of himself he'd buried so deep he barely recognized it. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he looked at Julian, at the way the streetlights caught the flecks of gold in his eyes, and felt something shift inside him. Julian stepped closer, his hand finding Cole's cheek. The touch was gentle, but it burned through every defense Cole had built. "You don't have to be afraid," Julian whispered. And then Julian kissed him. The world stopped. Cole's mind screamed that this was wrong, that he was straight, that he had a girlfriend, a plan, a life. But his body leaned into the kiss, his hands finding Julian's waist, pulling him closer. The lies he'd told himself, every morning, every night, crumbled under the weight of that moment. For the first time in his life, Cole felt alive. When they pulled apart, Cole's breath was ragged, his heart pounding. Julian's eyes searched his, waiting for a reaction. I don't know what I'm doing," Cole stammered, his voice raw. Julian smiled, soft and understanding. "That's okay. You don't have to have all the answers tonight." But Cole knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same. Cole woke the next morning with Julian's kiss still burning on his lips. He lay in his Brooklyn apartment, staring at the ceiling, the memory of last night replaying like a movie he couldn't pause. Sarah was still asleep beside him, her soft breathing a stark contrast to the chaos in his mind. He slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her, and stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The man staring back looked like Cole, same sharp jaw, same green eyes, but he felt like a stranger. He'd spent years building a life that everyone approved of, a life that made sense. But one night, one kiss, had unraveled it all. He splashed cold water on his face, as if he could wash away the truth. At work, Cole's mind was a battlefield. He sat in his glass-walled office, spreadsheets blurring before his eyes. His colleagues chatted about stocks and weekend plans, but all he could think about was Julian. The way his laugh had felt like a melody, the way his touch had ignited something Cole didn't know he had. He checked his phone obsessively, hoping for a message from the number Julian had given him. Nothing. By lunch, he couldn't take it anymore. He texted Julian, "Hey, it's Cole. You free tonight?" His thumb hovered over the send button for a full minute before he pressed it. The wait for a reply was agonizing. When his phone buzzed, Cole's heart leapt. "Meet me at the High Line, 7 p.m., bring your courage." Julian's words were playful, but they carried a challenge Cole couldn't ignore. The High Line was alive with evening strollers, the elevated park a ribbon of green cutting through the city's concrete. Cole spotted Julian leaning against a railing, his silhouette framed by the setting sun. He wore a fitted black jacket and jeans, his hair catching the golden light. Cole's breath hitched. How had he never noticed how beautiful a man could be? "You showed up," Julian said, his smile warm but cautious. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," Cole admitted, shoving his hands into his pockets to hide their trembling. "Last night it messed me up." Julian's expression softened. "Good. It was supposed to." They walked along the path, the city's pulse humming below them. Julian talked about his latest photography project, capturing the raw beauty of New York's forgotten corners. Cole listened, drawn to Julian's passion, his fearlessness. But the weight of his own life pressed down on him. Sarah, his family, the expectations he'd carried since he was a kid. "I don't know how to do this," Cole said suddenly, stopping by a bench overlooking the Hudson River. "I've spent my whole life being someone I'm not. I don't even know who I am anymore." Julian sat beside him, close enough that their knees brushed. "You don't have to figure it all out now. But you can't keep hiding, Cole. Not from yourself." Cole's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to say he could go back to his old life, but the words felt hollow. Instead, he asked, "How did you know? About yourself, I mean." Julian leaned back, his gaze distant. "I was 16. Grew up in a town where being gay wasn't just frowned upon. It was dangerous. I tried to be someone else for a long time. Dated girls, played the part. But then I met someone who saw me, really saw me. And I couldn't lie anymore." Cole swallowed hard. What happened to him? Julian's smile was bittersweet. "He moved away. But he gave me the courage to be myself. I owe him that." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Cole wanted that courage, but fear clawed at him. What would his family say? His friends? Sarah? The life he'd built was a house of cards, and Julian was a gust of wind threatening to topple it. They spent the rest of the evening talking, laughing, stealing glances that lingered too long. When Julian's hand found Cole's again, Cole didn't pull away. The touch was electric, grounding him in a way he'd never felt before. As they parted ways, Julian pressed a kiss to Cole's cheek, soft and fleeting. "Don't run from this," he whispered. That night, Cole lay awake beside Sarah, guilt and desire warring inside him. He thought of Julian's words, of the life he'd been living and the one he might want. For the first time, he let himself imagine it, a life where he didn't have to hide. The next day, Sarah noticed something was off. "You've been quiet," she said over breakfast, her blue eyes searching his. "Everything okay?" Cole's stomach twisted. He wanted to tell her the truth, but the words stuck in his throat. "Just work stress," he lied, hating himself for it. He met Julian again that evening, this time at a small jazz club in the West Village. The music was sultry, the air thick with possibility. Julian's presence was intoxicating, pulling Cole deeper into a world he'd never dared to explore. They danced, their bodies close, the rhythm of the music syncing with their heartbeats. Cole felt alive, free, but terrified. "I can't keep doing this," Cole said later, as they stood outside the club, the city buzzing around them. "I have a girlfriend. A life. I can't just—" Julian cut him off, his voice gentle but firm. "You're not betraying anyone by being honest with yourself, Cole, but you are betraying yourself by pretending." The words hit like a punch. Cole wanted to argue, but Julian's eyes held him captive. They kissed again, this time slower, deeper, the world fading away until it was just them. When they pulled apart, Cole's resolve was crumbling. "I need time," he said, his voice shaking. Julian nodded, his expression unreadable. "Take it, but don't take too long." Cole watched him walk away, the weight of his choice pressing down on him. He knew he was standing at a crossroads, and no matter which path he chose, someone would get hurt. Cole's life began to split in two. By day, he was the polished finance bro, charming clients and crunching numbers. By night, he was someone else, someone who met Julian in hidden corners of the city, stealing moments that felt like stolen breaths. Every touch, every glance, was a step further from the man he'd been, and closer to the man he was afraid to become. Sarah started asking questions. "You're different," she said one evening, as they sat in their apartment, the TV droning in the background. "You're here, but you're not here." Her voice was soft, but her eyes were sharp, searching for answers Cole wasn't ready to give. He wanted to tell her about Julian, about the way his heart raced when they were together, but the words felt like betrayal. Instead, he mumbled something about work and changed the subject. Sarah didn't push, but the distance between them grew, a silent chasm he didn't know how to bridge. Julian, meanwhile, was a constant pull. They met at art galleries, rooftop bars, quiet bookstores, places where Cole could let his guard down. Julian had a way of making the world feel bigger, brighter, like every moment was a photograph waiting to be captured. One night, at a small gallery in Chelsea, Julian showed Cole his latest work, a series of black and white photos of strangers in fleeting moments of joy. "This is what I love," Julian said, his voice full of passion, finding the beauty in the chaos. Cole stared at a photo of two men laughing in a rainstorm, their hands intertwined. "Is that what you see in me?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Julian turned to him, his expression serious. "I see someone who's fighting to be free, and I want to be there when you finally let go." The words were a lifeline, but they also terrified him. Letting go meant dismantling everything. His relationship, his family's expectations, the image he'd spent years perfecting. He wasn't ready. Not yet. But the more time he spent with Julian, the harder it was to go back to his old life. Sarah started noticing his late nights, his distracted stares. One evening, she confronted him. "Are you seeing someone else?" she asked, her voice trembling. Cole's heart stopped. He wanted to lie, to protect her, but the truth was clawing its way out. "It's not what you think," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm just figuring things out." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Figure it out soon, Cole. I deserve better than this." She was right, and he knew it. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat on the fire escape, the city sprawling below him, and thought about Julian. About the way he felt alive in his presence, the way he could breathe for the first time in years. But he also thought about Sarah, about the life they'd planned, about the promises he'd made. The next day, he met Julian at a small cafe in Williamsburg. Julian looked tired, his usual spark dimmed. "You're pulling away," he said, stirring his coffee. "I can feel it." Cole's chest ached. "I'm trying to do the right thing. For everyone." Julian's eyes flashed with frustration. The right thing isn't lying to yourself, Cole, or to her. You're not doing anyone any favors by pretending to be someone you're not. The words stung, but they were true. Cole wanted to reach for Julian, to hold on to the one thing that felt real, but fear held him back. I need to talk to Sarah, he said finally. I owe her that. Julian nodded, his expression guarded. Do what you need to do, but don't expect me to wait forever. The conversation left Cole reeling. He knew he had to face Sarah, but the thought of hurting her was unbearable. That night, he cooked dinner for them, a desperate attempt to hold on to something normal. But as they sat across from each other, the silence was deafening. Sarah, he started, his voice shaking. There's something I need to tell you. Her eyes met his, and he saw the fear in them. What is it, Cole? He took a deep breath, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. I think I'm not who I thought I was. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Sarah's face crumpled, and Cole felt his heart break. But for the first time, he was telling the truth. The conversation with Sarah was a storm that left Cole shattered. He told her about Julian, not the details, but enough. Enough for her to know that the man she loved wasn't the man she thought he was. Her tears were quiet, but they cut deeper than any words could. I thought we were building a life together, she said, her voice breaking. Was it all a lie? No, Cole said, his own eyes burning. I loved you. I still do. But I've been lying to myself for a long time, and I can't do it anymore. Sarah moved out the next day. She didn't scream or throw things. She just packed a bag and left, her silence louder than any argument. Cole sat in the empty apartment, the weight of his choices suffocating him. He'd hurt her, and that guilt was a knife in his chest. But beneath it, there was something else, a flicker of relief, like a weight had been lifted. He texted Julian, his fingers trembling. Can we talk? I told her. Julian's reply was instant. My place. Now. Julian's apartment was a small loft in the East Village, filled with photography equipment and prints pinned to the walls. It was chaotic, vibrant, alive, everything Cole's life wasn't. Julian opened the door, his expression a mix of concern and hope. You okay? He asked. Cole shook his head. I don't know what I am anymore. Julian pulled him inside, his hands gentle but firm. You're you, Cole. That's enough. They sat on the couch, the city's hum a distant backdrop. Cole told him everything. About Sarah, about the guilt, about the fear of what came next. Julian listened, his presence steady, grounding. When Cole finished, Julian took his hand. You did the right thing, he said. It doesn't feel like it now, but you did. Cole wanted to believe him, but the future felt like a void. What happens now? He asked. Julian's smile was soft, almost shy. We figure it out. Together, if you want. The words were a lifeline, and Cole clung to them. They spent the night talking, laughing, kissing, the walls Cole had built crumbling with every touch. For the first time, he let himself imagine a life where he didn't have to hide. It was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. But the world outside Julian's loft wasn't as forgiving. Cole's family was still in Ohio, rooted in a conservative town where being gay wasn't just frowned upon. It was unthinkable. He hadn't told them yet, but he knew he'd have to. The thought made his stomach churn. At work, rumors started to spread. A colleague had seen him with Julian at the jazz club, and whispers followed him through the office. Cole ignored them, but the pressure was mounting. He felt like he was walking a tightrope, one misstep away from losing everything. Julian, sensing his tension, suggested a weekend getaway. Let's get out of the city, he said. Just you and me. No expectations, no pressure. They drove to a cabin in the Catskills, a quiet retreat surrounded by towering pines and a serene lake. The change of scenery was a balm to Cole's frayed nerves. They spent the days hiking, cooking over a fire, and talking about everything and nothing. Julian taught Cole how to use his camera, laughing when Cole's shots were blurry. Cole felt himself unraveling, the knots of fear and doubt loosening with every moment. One night, as they sat by the lake, the stars reflecting on the water, Julian turned to him. You're allowed to be happy, Cole. You don't have to punish yourself for being who you are. The words hit hard. Cole realized he'd been carrying shame like a second skin, a legacy of his upbringing, his town, his own denial. But here, with Julian, he felt free. He leaned in, kissing Julian with a fierceness that surprised them both. The world didn't end. The stars didn't fall. And for the first time, Cole believed he might be okay. But when they returned to the city, reality crashed back in. Cole's mother called, her voice tight with worry. "Your cousin saw something online," she said. "About you and some guy. What's going on, Cole?" The question was a punch to the gut. Cole's heart raced, his palms sweating. He wasn't ready for this, not yet. But he knew he couldn't keep running. Cole's mother's voice echoed in his head for days. He avoided her calls, letting them go to voicemail, each one a reminder of the confrontation he wasn't ready to face. Julian noticed his distance, his quiet moments, and tried to pull him out of it. "You can't keep running from your family," he said one evening, as they sat in a quiet Brooklyn diner. "They're part of you, whether you like it or not." Cole stared at his coffee, the steam curling like his thoughts. "You don't know them," he said. "They won't understand. They'll hate me." Julian reached across the table, his hand covering Cole's. "They might surprise you. But even if they don't, you're not alone anymore." The words were a comfort, but they didn't erase the fear. Cole knew he had to tell his family the truth, but the thought of losing them, of losing the only roots he had, kept him paralyzed. He threw himself into work, into Julian, into anything that could distract him from the inevitable. But the world had other plans. A week later, Cole's boss called him into his office. "There's been talk," he said, his tone clipped, "about your personal life. It's affecting your performance, and clients are noticing." Cole's stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying get it together, Cole. This is a professional environment. People are watching." The warning was clear: conform or risk everything. Cole left the office in a daze, the city's noise a dull roar in his ears. He met Julian that night, his frustration spilling over. "I can't win," he said, pacing Julian's loft. "If I'm honest, I lose my job, my family, everything. If I hide, I lose myself." Julian grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to stop. "You're not losing me," he said fiercely. "And you're not losing yourself. Not anymore." The words grounded him, but the fear lingered. Cole knew he had to make a choice. He couldn't keep living in two worlds, torn between who he was and who he'd pretended to be. That night, he made a decision. He called his mother. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling. "There's something I need to tell you." The conversation was brutal. His mother cried, his father was silent, and his younger brother asked questions Cole didn't know how to answer. They didn't disown him, but their disappointment was palpable, a weight that settled in his chest. "We need time," his mother said finally. This isn't what we expected." Cole hung up, feeling both broken and free. He went to Julian's, needing his warmth, his strength. Julian held him, no words needed, and Cole let himself cry for the first time in years. It wasn't just about his family. It was about the years he'd spent hiding, the pain he'd inflicted on himself and others, the life he'd almost lost. The next day, Cole went to work with a new resolve. He wasn't going to hide anymore. When a colleague made a snide comment about his lifestyle, Cole didn't flinch. "I'm gay," he said simply, his voice steady. "If that's a problem, take it up with someone who cares." The words felt like a release, like shedding a skin that had never fit. Some colleagues avoided him, but others surprised him with their support. His boss didn't fire him, though the tension remained. Cole didn't care. For the first time, he was living for himself. Julian was there through it all, a constant presence. They spent evenings exploring the city, building a life together one moment at a time. Cole started to see himself differently, not as the man he'd been told to be, but as the man he was. Flawed, scared, but real. One night, as they walked through Central Park, Julian stopped him under a canopy of autumn leaves. The city was quiet, the air crisp with possibility. "I'm proud of you," Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're braver than you know." Cole looked at him, at the man who'd changed everything, and felt a surge of love so strong it scared him. He pulled Julian close, their foreheads touching, and whispered, "I'm not running anymore." Months passed, and Cole's life took on a new rhythm. He and Julian were inseparable, their bond growing stronger with every shared moment. Cole moved out of his old apartment, leaving behind the ghosts of his past life, and found a small place in the West Village, closer to Julian. It wasn't perfect, but it was his, a space where he could be himself. His relationship with his family was strained, but not broken. His mother called occasionally, her voice softer each time, as if she was trying to understand. His brother sent him a text one day, a simple "I'm proud of you," and it brought tears to Cole's eyes. His father was still distant, but Cole held on to hope. He'd learned that change took time, and he was willing to wait. At work, things settled. Cole's honesty had cost him some alliances, but it had earned him respect from others. He threw himself into his projects with a new passion, no longer hiding behind a facade. He even started taking photography classes, inspired by Julian's love for capturing the world's beauty. The camera became a way to see himself, to document the man he was becoming. One evening, Julian invited Cole to an art show where his work was being displayed. The gallery was packed, the air buzzing with excitement. Julian's photographs lined the walls, each one a story of love, loss, and resilience. Cole stood in front of a photo of himself, taken during their weekend in the Catskills. He was laughing, his eyes bright with a joy he hadn't known he could feel. The caption read, "To Cole, who found his light." Julian appeared beside him, his hand slipping into Cole's. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice nervous. Cole turned to him, his heart full. "I think you're incredible, and I think I'm the luckiest guy in the world." Julian's smile was radiant. "Good, because I'm not letting you go." That night, as they stood on the rooftop of Julian's building, the city sprawling below them, Cole felt a peace he'd never known. He'd spent years running from himself, building a life on lies and expectations. But now, with Julian by his side, he was home. The journey hadn't been easy. He'd lost pieces of his old life, relationships, certainties, the comfort of fitting in. But what he'd gained was worth it. The freedom to love, to be seen, to live without shame. He thought of Sarah, of the pain he'd caused, and hoped she'd found her own peace. He thought of his family, of the slow steps toward acceptance. And he thought of Julian, the man who'd shown him that truth was worth fighting for. As the city lights twinkled below, Cole pulled Julian into his arms, their lips meeting in a kiss that felt like a promise. The lies he'd told himself were gone, replaced by a truth that was messy, beautiful, and his. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. And that, he knew, was enough.